A reading from Exodus chapter 3, verses 13 through 15. But Moses said to God, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am." He said further, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my title for all generations."
When I was a young seminary student in 1996 at the Iliff School of Theology, the United Methodist Seminary in Denver, one of the first people I met was Professor Dr. Vincent Harding. Dr. Harding was a Quaker, a speechwriter for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and a historian with deep commitments to nonviolence gained from his time working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee during the Civil Rights era. He was a legend of sorts on campus, a celebrated scholar and storyteller in social justice circles. He was also a man small in stature, simple dress, comfortable walking shoes, and quiet in voice, often pausing between words to let them linger in a room. Nearly 4 times my age when I first met him, Dr. Harding referred to students, colleagues, and decorated veterans of the civil rights movement with the same greeting, all as brothers and sisters. Unassumingly, he would walk into a classroom and move the chairs into a circle, believing that everyone had a story and something to offer or speak into the center. Once seated, after a moment of silence, he would ask each person their name, where they were from, and their maternal grandmother's name, and where she was from. He welcomed everyone into the circle. Dr. Harding prefaced any gathering with a question. I saw him engage people this way numerous times in a variety of settings, no matter who was in the room, their status or degree or prestige. Inevitably, it would open a space and initiate a conversation with each person as a full person, even as it were among their ancestors. He also abhorred nicknames. He said Americans were fat because we ate each other's name. He was never a Vince, but always Vincent Gordon Harding. Names matter. Some people have names with specific meaning or carry intentions that their parents hope for a particular name to impart. Others have biblical or family names that have been passed down for generations. My name, Amy, not short for Amanda, was the name of my great-grandmother Amy, the only one not living at the time of my birth. My middle name, Rebecca, was chosen because it was biblical and the name of my aunt. I've passed on that name to my own daughter, Ruby Rebecca. And Jennifer and I spent hours upon hours considering the names of Ruby Rebecca and Samuel Paul, trying on the sounds and searching the meaning of the familial and biblical name combinations that we eventually chose years before our kids were even conceived. I love my names, their meanings, and how they came to be. In fact, knowing the name Amy means beloved has mattered a lot to me in life, especially when I think about God and being a person of sacred worth at a time when the church and society negated my personhood. Sometimes people choose names or change names all for different reasons. Names can affect the way the name bearer is perceived by others or the way that we perceive ourselves. And there are some names that have no intrinsic meaning, but just sound good or made the top 100 name list for that year. And if you're wondering, Olivia and Noah are leading the way in 2024. Our names, though, are an incredibly important part of our identity. They carry deep personal, cultural, familial, and historical connections. They also give us a sense of who we are in communities in which we belong, our place in the world. That was no different during biblical times. In the Bible, there are many examples of names that have meaning. There are numerous names that have been changed and given new meaning to the name bearer. For example, God changed Abram's name to Abraham, or the father of many nations. Saul became Paul, and both Esther and Peter had a name change too. But do names hold any power? Ask any transgender person, and they are likely to say that names they often choose after transition present deeper truths about who they have always been. Or to anyone who's ever read the Harry Potter series, you know the name Lord Voldemort. J.K. Rowling's wizarding community is terrified of saying Lord Voldemort's name, to the point that no one even dares say it aloud, instead calling him the one who cannot be named. Names matter and they hold power. And this brings us to the interaction between God and Moses in Exodus chapter 3. Now, just to recap and give a little bit of context, Moses has seen a burning bush, though the bush has not been consumed. Then Moses and God have a kind of strange conversation in which God promises deliverance for the enslaved Israelites, directly tapping Moses to fulfill God's covenant. That's a lot to take in, but it doesn't stop there. The passage gets kind of even more weird, like some sort of Sphinx riddle or word problem, when Moses all of a sudden asks God for a name. God says to Moses, "I am who I am," which can also be translated as "I will be what I will be," or "I am present." Now, I don't think a name was too much for Moses to ask of God. I kind of imagine it all went down like a Cheers episode, sort of like there are two friends sitting at the burning bush bar, and Moses is thinking they should at least be on a first name basis since God is talking a pretty good game about leading people out of slavery and such. So Moses did likely what we would do and ask God's name. God goes on to make clear to Moses that God has faith in him. And he, Moses, will be leading the Israelites out of slavery. God offers a name drop in the mix to let people know by what authority this is all happening. Again, no small task. I can only imagine the look on Moses' face thinking, wait, are you God and you want me to do this? Gosh, bless his heart. But what is underneath Moses' question is really the heart of the matter. A desire to connect, a plea for solidarity, and a reassurance that he isn't going it alone. It's like the kid on the playground, the first day of school, or the teenager deciding where to sit in the cafeteria, asking, stumbling with, "What's your name?" and simply wanting to know that they too are not alone. I mean, we've all been there, right? Here lies the mystery of I am who I am, which admittedly still reminds me of the cartoon Popeye. I am what I am. But Roger Nam, professor at Candler School of Theology, writes that whatever the precise understanding, the answer, I am who I am, is not just a declaration of a name, but an assurance of God in all of it. And note, this doesn't come through God's power, but rather an assurance of God's presence. In God's response, Moses realizes that he is not alone and that God will deliver on promises of liberation and redemption. How it will all happen is still a mystery, an ongoing revelation lived out in the covenantal relationship between God and humanity working together. In biblical times, the name of God was deemed too holy to pronounce. So it was read as Adonai or Lord, built on the Hebrew verb to be, and which is related to the divine name used frequently throughout the Old Testament, Yahweh. But here's the thing. Names not only matter to us, but the names we use for God also reflect and shape how we think about God. Throughout the pages of the Old Testament, we see the dynamic nature of God and how over time God was understood. Names for God are far and wide, and they help us to know God and connect with the Holy One. But despite our efforts, our language falls short in attempts to describe God exhaustively. Our language can never contain or give a comprehensive description of God. While the names we choose suggest attributes of God, names can never express God's infinite divine mystery. And personally, I'm okay with living in the mystery while trusting what I know to be true about God through a lived experience in a relationship with God. I find a lot of comfort in relating to God as I am. Others might prefer God the Father or Creator God, Mothering God, or Holy God. Think back to early biblical writers drawing from their own human experiences. They used a variety of terms to express their understanding of God known in their lives. They named and knew God as shepherd, judge, rock, light, fortress. In Isaiah, we see images of God as woman in labor, a woman giving birth, a loving mother. The Gospel of Luke portrays God as a woman searching for a lost coin. So many diverse biblical images and titles for God, including the I Am, which provides us infinite ways to relate and connect with God, while still grounding us in the past, present, and future, affirming the presence of a God who is with us and is within us. It's very meta of God, actually. I am who I am is the absolute being. But it doesn't end there with a declaration, but with an invitation. The absolute being is what it is, and it is inclusive of all, including us. God, the I Am, is not separate from us, but a part of us in relationship with us. If you look across the world at religions and spiritual practices embedded in the fields of study from psychology to metaphysics to scholars and saints like St. Jerome and Thomas Aquinas, the words I am speak to the infinite nature and essence of God and endless paths through which God may be approached. I am are the parts of the divine reflected also in each and every person. Now stay with me here. Basically, God tells us in this passage, God says, I am. And the being that is able to say I am is God. In that sense, the very I am mentioned is God, but is also God in the I am, meaning God's presence is in us, and everywhere there is a I am. The I am is for us a spiritual entity, or what some would call the soul, or spiritual or true self, or a Christ mind. For we are made in God's image and reflect God's likeness. All of us, even the ones we can't seem to find the good, much less the God in. Last week, my kids started school. Like so many kids, they are taking on new things, meeting new people, and trying to find their place. From time to time, something will come out of their mouths like, I'm not good at math, or I'm never going to get to play this year. Our words create our world, our reality, and believing that we can't, we surely won't. This sort of thinking and language doesn't just sabotage kids, but all of us. And while we might not think of it in the moment, when we say I am in a pejorative or less than way, it is an affront to God, to the very essence of God that is within us. Now, some of you maybe are hearing this for the first time. Some are trying to get your heads around your own I am and how that fits with God's I am. And others of you are likely still thinking about Popeye, and that's okay. But know this, as Richard Rohr reminds us, all people have access to their I am, or their true self, from their very first inhalation and exhalation, which is the very sound of the sacred. Friends, this is literally the unspeakable Jewish name for God, Yahweh, the I am. That which cannot be spoken, but only breathed, inhaling and exhaling with open lips. Richard Rohr goes on to beautifully describe this connection with the I am as the first and last words we will ever utter, most likely without even knowing it. Let that sink in. That there is nothing that we have to do or strive for or be other than who we are in the I am. It's who you have always been and who you are still becoming. The I am who I am. We reflect what we believe and who we follow. Isn't that the essence of being Christian, of being people of the way, and living into our own I am within the wide and infinite I am of God? Most of human history has described the soul, our essence, our I amness, as the participation in the eternal life of God. The great surprise and perhaps irony is that you are who you think you are has actually nothing to do with your original creation. Your call, like Moses, is to find the I am that you are inside the I am of God, which is saying quite a lot. It's love becoming love in this unique form called you, and you, and you, and in all creation. In fact, there is no greater calling or ask of you other than to live into this I am. Some people make their living reminding and motivating others through language. There are many different ways to do that, but one way is through professional coaching. Coaching is now a $4.5 billion global industry these days. One professional coach I was recently reading about is Ben Newman, a performance and mental conditioning coach for some of today's greatest professional athletes and highest performing teams in the NBA, NFL, PGA, and NCAA. Ben has worked with coaches and players from the last 6 Super Bowl championship teams and currently serves as the performance coach for the Kansas State football team. His resume is impressive and his fee just as deep. His work, however, is really simple. It's focused on getting people to recognize their own I am. You can schedule a call with him, and for a small fee, he will walk you through the process of creating your own I am statement. By the way, you don't need a paid professional to help you do this. I'm available free of charge. But Ben starts with a who you are question. And to be clear, this isn't about looking at things you've already accomplished, your title or your bank account status, but focusing instead on the things you believe you can be. He then invites you to take out a piece of paper and write a response to the questions using I am statements, working your way through a list until you come up with your own I am truth or essence. His claim is that our I am statements drive every aspect of our lives. I think it's worth trying to look at the messages and stories and beliefs that we have about ourselves. But the most important I am statement, I'd say, is found in Exodus, where in God speaking I am, we not only find out more about God, but also ourselves. So try it. Say to yourself, a stranger or a friend, "Hello, I am." What's your name? And listen, like Moses, to your call from the I am, the one that only you can fulfill. Friends, take the time to explore how God's presence is being made known in your life through the I am. Our takeaways for today are simply this. Our names are an incredibly important part of our identity. They carry deep personal and cultural, familial and historical connections. They also give us a sense of who we are, the communities in which we belong, and our place in the world. Second, within I am is not just a declaration of a name, but an assurance of God's presence with us, past, present, and future. And finally, all people have access to their I am from our first breath until our final exhale, which is the very sound of the sacred. Thanks be to God.